Late last night, once again, a vote went apart from the way that you wanted it to go as the president of a public media station, and as we, your employees as well, commiserate with you. Tell us, I think people get confused about
where our place is connected to NPR and PBS.
Yes.
Right. And on top of that...
And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting on top of that.
So let me just start with the legislative action in case you watched it last night. And I also want to acknowledge that if you watched it last night, like I did, Rhett McGovern was on fire. And he's, champion of public broadcasting and was very much against this rescission and did everything in his power from the floor and in the Rules Committee to make sure it didn't advance.
Including trying to release the Epstein files as part of making this a... Right.
Yeah. So just to kind of break this down, basically the legislation that passed last night and will be signed today is claws back 2 years of funding to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is a separate entity that takes federally appropriated money and sends it out to public broadcasters. And those include PBS, they include NPR, that are both based in D.C., and it includes local stations across the country, more than 1,500 stations that get grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It has an advance appropriation, and now that money is clawed back. And so as of October 1st, all of those public broadcasting entities across the country, PBS, NPR, and the local stations will not receive any money from the CPB.
So it's not like they're reaching into NEPM's bank account and taking that money out of it. It's that it runs out when it would have been refunded at the beginning of October.
That's correct. So one of the things that has helped public broadcasting grow into the system it has become is that we had a reliable base of support from federal dollars through the CPB. And so, yes, the federal fiscal year starts on October 1st. And so when these funds run out, there will be no more. And that's kind of what we're looking at, is that the grant that we had planned on and budgeted around kind of goes to zero in the new fiscal year.
I think the other thing that people might not understand is this idea of the rescission, why they had to claw it back, as opposed to the so-called big, beautiful budget that passed last week. The way that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been funded in advance. Can you talk a little bit about that and why this rescission needed to be part of it if the defunding of public media was what the Trump administration was aiming to do right away?
Yeah, so the folks who set up the CPB recognize that one of the challenges when you have a broadcast entity dedicated to the free press and to delivering trustworthy information to the American people is that you don't want it kind of being a political football in the halls of Congress. And so the advanced appropriation, which gave CPB 2 years of funding, made sure there was a level of stability. No matter what happened in Congress, you could count on this level of funding for a couple of years. And the money varied a little bit year to year, but it was something that you could count on, and it helped these stations grow and feel some stability, even when the market might change for media. And we've seen that in our lifetime, how much it's changed. So the advance appropriation meant that there were a couple of years in the bank waiting to go to the CPB. And so we've seen in the first Trump administration, and frankly, in every Republican administration since Nixon, efforts to defund the CPB. This was successful. It'll happen. It's not in the president's budget for the coming fiscal year. And by this rescission action, they're making sure it doesn't come back in. And so the money is gone for the next 2 years, and then the future appropriation would have affected years beyond that. We're getting way in the weeds.
No.
But I think this is important for people to figure out.
The weeds are important here because it definitely lays out a little bit more of the nuance of how this neural network of stations and outlets actually works, which definitely is kind of glossed over in general. Like when I talk about where I work, I mentioned that I work at an NPR affiliate. It is part of a chain of things that people don't necessarily understand, like how that works.
Right.
I mean, it's the same as if like you're looking at like Channel 5 in Boston. They are an ABC affiliate. They're not necessarily ABC,
Yeah.
but like there's a connection there that people don't necessarily get the gist of. So
Yeah,
getting
Brian
into the
Lapis
weeds
works
of
for
this-
22 News,
Right.
but he doesn't, and kind of works for NBC,
kind of works
but not
for him,
really.
but not really. And so, like, explaining a little bit more of how we work within that chain is a bit necessary at this point in time.
You got it. So we are an NPR affiliate, as you said, and what that means is that we pay NPR every year, and it's about $500,000, a little bit more, for all of its programming. So if folks listen to Morning Edition or All Things Considered or Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, those are NPR shows that NPR distributes and produces, and we pay for them on an annual basis. And so that gives us the right to put them on the air here, and they're really important to our community here in Western Mass. And so that's how we are an NPR affiliate. We also carry the newscasts and so forth. So yes, lots of people think they listen to NPR, but they're truly listening to a local station. And we have the money to pay NPR because folks in this community contribute. And most of our money does come from local businesses, local donors, members, et cetera. But this critical piece of federal funding supports not just us, but this whole ecosystem of show producers, NPR itself, PBS itself. And so it really is a critical piece of keeping this whole thing locked together.
We're speaking with NEPM President Matt Abramovitz about the recent cuts in the rescission package, specifically to public broadcasting. There were other cuts, USAID cuts, global soft power. Some people have been referring to it as ways that we were giving humanitarian aid across the globe, which have also been drastically cut through this. But because this is Matt Abramovitz's wheelhouse and we're here self-serving to a certain degree, we're going to learn more about this. It's almost this rescission is a double whammy in the sense that NEPM and other local stations have had a cut, but NPR has also had a cut. So even though we pay NPR for programming, we have less money to pay them with now because of this cut, and NPR itself has less money
To put towards shows that we would put on this station.
Exactly. So let's get into the jot and tittle of this. How much money? That's a real thing from the Bible, everybody. It may sound,
I know.
It may sound titillating, but
Depending on your translation.
oh my God, did I say that in front of my boss? How much money does this cut from NEPM's budget in actual dollars and cents?
Sure. So in our current fiscal year budget, we were planning on a grant from the CPB of $875,000. And so, as I said, as of October 1st, that number would go down to zero. And I want to just say, too, that...
Gentlemen, can we just stop right there?
Yeah.
$875,000.
Yes.
Think about your household income. Think about what business you may be a part of. To take a hit for 1 year of $875,000, that's a lot of money.
Well, I want to go beyond that, though. It's not just 1 year. It's this year and every year
Ongoing.
moving forward.
Right.
And so our work just got a lot harder. I think that we are turning to our community for immediate, rapid response to this, because this is something that we do need to bridge as we try to think about ways of working without federal support. There are efforts to bring that support back through the appropriations process and some other means in Congress right now. It's a hard process to predict, and I think we need to kind of start to prepare for other outcomes. And it is it's a big number. And unfortunately, it also gets a little bit bigger when you get under the hood. The CPB does other things besides directly support stations with grants. It also helps pay for music licensing that lets music stations play music and pay for it properly. It also supports our website, CMS. And that is all federal dollars that support these services that all these stations rely on. And there is a future, possibly, where stations would be kind of on their own to buy their own website CMS or to negotiate their own music rights to play music on the radio or the TV. And that puts even more pressure on these local stations. Now, we're fortunate. That 875 is about 10, 12% of our operating budget. There are stations in more rural parts of the country where the federal grant represents 20, 30, 40% of their total income. And these stations won't just struggle, they will shudder.
We here at NEPM There was a lot of publicity, both on these airwaves and other press, about the financial shortfall that NEPM was experiencing over the last couple of years when you came on to try to right the ship. That shortfall was going in the right direction. There was a multi-million-dollar yearly deficit that NEPM was experiencing that has now been shrunk to not completely fixed, but a much more manageable number. We now shoot back up in the wrong direction, all because of the stroke of the pen that will happen today.
Yes. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. It's a step backwards. We've been making great progress, and I think we have a great team doing work that the community responds to, and we've had tremendous fundraising success and audience success, and I think we're doing important, critical work here in Western Mass and beyond. And we have we're planning for a deficit this year, but it's relatively small, and now the hill got a lot steeper. So it really is, I think we have a revenue problem, not a mission or service problem, and we really want to help close that gap with our local community, because fundamentally it's the people who use this service and value it who are going to help us kind of navigate this turbulent time.
Well, and now we'll have to do it with local community. Can you talk, this might also be getting a little bit into the weeds, but
Sure.
about the difference in voting for this rescission as opposed to voting for a restoration, which has been bandied about a bit on the Republican side at least?
What we saw is that there were House members on the Republican side who were publicly in support of public media. They understood what these cuts would do to stations across the country, and they still voted for the rescission. Part of that has to do with the dynamics of the Republican Party and the pressure that these folks are under, and I think that they may think there are other paths to support these stations, but that they felt they had to fall in line. I don't know. I can only, speak to the reps I spoke to, and I had great contact with the offices of both Representative McGovern and Representative Neal, and both were strongly in support of defeating this rescission. And I don't know that I can speak with any authority on kind of what folks are going through, but it is an interesting dynamic where you're getting folks who can say, I love my station, I know they need this money, and I'm going to vote to claw it back.
And we did hear that. It was an almost party line vote last night in the middle of the night. I think there were 2 Republicans
Who were no votes.
But apart from that, think of how many people are in the House of Representatives. It was largely along party lines. Let me play devil's advocate with you for a second here. Matt Abramovitz, who is the president of NEPM, as we are experiencing this $875,000 cut at this local NPR affiliate, in addition to the $1 billion+ of cuts that will go to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting across the country. Why public broadcasting? Why should the federal government fund a radio station or media at all? Are we the mouthpiece of the government if we take these federal funds? Maybe we should all be on our own and independent capitalist contractors seeing what people want and giving the people what they want and getting funded like good old-fashioned capitalism. Why do we need federal funding for public broadcasting at all?
Here's the honest answer. If you go back to the founding of this country, the only field of work that was called out in the Constitution was the press. And it was recognized then, and I think it's recognized now, that informed citizenry is the backbone, the foundation, the bedrock of a functioning democracy and a society. And it is in the interest of the government for our citizens to have good information that they can trust, that is truthful. And I think that it's an investment in our lives. It is an investment in our community. And I think that it's very much in the interest of the American people to support a system. And in some ways, I think you could make the case that not only should the federal government support journalism, especially when it's faced, if you look at the way newspapers have evaporated across this country, supporting local journalism and the free press is in everyone's interest. In fact, maybe we should be supporting it more, not less.
A la England, the BBC.
Correct. There are other countries that have recognized that this is an important piece of keeping societies functioning, and you actually have to invest more in it. And I did hear that from some representatives of the Massachusetts delegation. So I think that the work that we do, the work that this show does in this community, for example, I think that's part of what glues our region together. And I think it's something that's very much in everyone's interest to support.
What do these cuts and our possible responsibility for our licensing mean for classical NEPM?
I think right now we're still trying to assess, what we can raise locally to support our operations, and classical NEPM is still part of what we do. And, one of the joys of public broadcasting has been it delivers not just news and talk, but it delivers documentaries and music and all sorts of other great riches. So I think at this point we're still it's so fresh that we are assessing kind of what next steps could be, but until then we are here to keep going.
$875,000 per year is a large number to make up. While we were already trying to make up a multi-million-dollar yearly deficit that we were doing a good job under your leadership doing, there have been 2 rounds of cuts since we've been here for employees. Does that look like something that's looming on the horizon to try to close that gap for NEPM?
It would be too early for me to say. I mean, right now we are looking to fundraise and to think about other ways we can cut expenses without affecting our staff. Layoffs are always an option of last resort. So we're not there yet. But at this point, we are in uncharted territory for all public broadcasting. And across the system, we are looking at all the options to keep what we've built over the last 50 years going strong.
One of those options will begin Tuesday here in an emergency fund drive that was unscheduled, but is all of a sudden very, very necessary.
Very necessary.
Very necessary. Yeah.
And we'll have more on that all next week, where hopefully this gives you some insight into what's been going on with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with the rescission package, with the budget, the fact that not only are the giant programs you love from NPR and PBS under threat, but your local stations that bring you those programs are under threat all at the same time because of the rescission and because of the budget that passed last week. But we want to put the public in public broadcasting, and you are the public, and you will have an opportunity, if you believe in public media, which we hope that you do, and you probably do because you're listening to it right now, you will be able to support right now by going to NEPM.org, but in earnest on Tuesday with this emergency fund drive.
And frankly, if you're curious about the possibilities for restoration, call those representatives and ask them what that actually means, what it would look like, and how it would maybe affect the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR, PBS, and a lot further along those lines. Does this actually mean the dissolution of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting?
They are in the process of the CPB is doing its best to look for other routes to be funded. And they are also preparing for a wind down phase. And so they've indicated that they're in the process of shuttering and making good on the existing contracts they've had, and then starting to kind of pull up stakes and pull out of town.
Well, I, for one, want to say, and not just because you're my boss and because you're on the radio right now, that I've been a fan of public media since I was a child growing up in the umbrella of GBH in the Boston area and watching public television, as a late teenager getting into public radio, and the opportunity that public radio and public television provide to give us a glimpse into the places we live, whether it was this old house and literally going into people's houses with Norm and the Boston accent and fixing things up, to the Cosmos with Carl Sagan, to
all of the cooking shows that literally raised me from a child.
Yeah, and that we have been given that opportunity by you, who had the vision to say we need to do better at covering where we live, that we've been able to do that for the last 2.5 years has been a gift. And it's something I would love to continue to be able to do. And we can't do it without your support. And we're in a state right now, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I appreciate that, and I appreciate what this show and what you two bring to it every single day. And I think that it's one of those things that if you look around everything that's been happening over the last few months, I think that this sense of serving people through the media for the public good and bringing our communities together with trusted voices and good information and entertainment, those are things that we need more than ever. And I'm so grateful that you two are here doing that every day.
And thank you for giving us that opportunity. Matt Abramovitz, the president of New England Public Media, giving us some insight into what this rescission means for our bottom line here and for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting across the country. Thanks so much.